Hi, my name is Jordan Weaver. I'm interviewing Miss Villegas. Miss Villegas, what story are you going to tell me about today?
Okay, so this story is about my great-grandmother. Her name is Lucy Provenzano.
Why did she come here?
Her family was poor, living in Sicily. They were looking for a better life, and at the time, it was the early 1900s, and they weren't doing so well in Sicily, and they heard that the United States was a great place to be. So a lot of immigrants from Italy and Sicily were going to the United States for a better life.
What did she hope to do when she came here?
She was actually a young kid, so I believe it was her mother who had high hopes of the United States. The only problem was that they were very strict in who they allowed to come into the United States, and every time her family went to try to emigrate to the United States, she was sick, and they would never let her go over because she was always, her eyes were always itchy, and they were red, and they're puffy, and the problem was that she actually had allergies, and they mistook that for her being sick, so eventually her mother would choose to leave her behind and took the rest of her siblings with the mother, and they would go over to the United States, leaving her with her aunt. And unfortunately for my great-grandmother, it became like a Cinderella story. Her aunt treated her very unkindly, and her cousins would get most of everything that they had. My great-grandma Lucy, her mother would send her money over from America, and the money would go directly to the cousins, not to her. And each year, she would try to scrape up money from other places to afford to come over and emigrate. But again, each year, she was not able to go through. So her mother concocted a plan for her to come to the United States illegally. And there was a plan where the money was sent to another person in Sicily. I don't know who that is. And the person found a boat and was able to smuggle her on it and get her over to the United States. And that's where she landed on the dock in Brooklyn. Dock 54, I think it was called, and her mother was waiting for her there with a man who she was arranged to be married to. So here's a girl who grew up in a Cinderella story, coming over to the United States, and here's this red-haired, blue-eyed guy, and not your typical Sicilian or Italian-looking person, and she's forced to marry him.
So when did all this happen?
Around late 1920s, early 1930s. I think it was 1931. Because my Grandma Dina, was born in 34. So I think it was in the 20s at some point, which is unfortunate because we all know that in U.S. history, 1929, the stock market crashed and sends people into further depression. So the depression that they were trying to escape from Sicily, they ended up hitting when they went to the United States anyway.
So when your grandma moved here, where did she live?
So what happens is she marries this guy she doesn't know. Super not happy about it. He's not that attractive looking. Well, to her at least. And they get on a train, and he basically tells her, listen, the last stop on this train is going to be where we find a house and we move. Because he had just saved up enough money to buy a house. So they get on the train, they hit the last stop, and it's Canarsie, Brooklyn. And what do? They buy the house he said he was going to buy. They stay there, and they thrive. They have 4 children, one of them being my grandmother, and they have a decent life, better than what her mother would have thought for her in Sicily.